Kehed Miha. Welcome everyone, my name is Darren Kuzma and this is another webinar of Mind the CRAIC, your online life hacks. Today we're continuing this series on communication with the title, How to Talk to Someone You Fancy. So before I get started, I would like to orient to, I'm live here in a Zoom chat. So if you're here following me, you can give me a wave or a hello right now just to let me know that you're alert and ready to go. And if you're on any of the other platforms there, you can certainly let me know and give me thumbs up, give me waves, give me likes and all those various sort of things. It would be great to see you and get some feedback. I'm here live on the Zoom chat, but in addition to that, I have another host, Michelle, and she's following on the different platforms with Instagram, with Facebook, and YouTube. So if you have any comments, questions, or things you would like to, get across to me and engage during this webinar, please do through Zoom or the other ways there. I would like to hear from you. And I am making it as a webinar rather than as online viewing content, but it will appear as that later so that you can engage, so that you can consider the information that I'm giving you, look at your own experience and see if you can put the two and two together. See if you can put the two together to see whether or not they'll actually help you. And considering more realities, considering more information, as long as you consider that in regard to your own life and apply it to your own life to see how it could work, that is the way to more effectively get things out of this webinar. Okay, so the webinar is of course based on the works of L. Ron Hubbard, and in particular this book, Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought, which goes over the basic principles of Scientology. We're going to draw from some points in that book to go over this topic, how to talk to someone you fancy. Okay, so here we go, just updating myself on some different platforms here, and there we go. So my experience, well, I certainly have had relationships. I've helped other people with relationships all throughout my life. The one thing that I will say is that using the basic principles of Scientology, I have helped people start relationships, strengthen relationships, and repair relationships. And even I have helped some people using the principles of Scientology in L. Ron Hubbard's technology of understanding the mind, understanding human behavior, and predicting it. I've helped some people discover that there was someone that was cheating on them. So it really is a very workable set of principles that can definitely help you discover more about yourself and other people. Okay, a note worthy of mention here. When we're trying to put across some sort of communication to someone that you fancy, I'm not a fan of pretense or appearances, because the one thing that can occur there is that you're putting across an idea or communicating an idea of what you're not really like. And the long-term success of a relationship that is forged or begun under such circumstances really does bring into question where it's going to end up. With lack of integrity at the beginning, not really presenting who you are yourself, it isn't likely to have long-term success. So lack of authenticity, if it does end up, becoming a problem later on, and things that were appearing to be the case when you first got together, or you first had discussions, or you first had communications, when that bears over time to not be true, and the relationship falls apart, that person, or whoever it was, if yourself or the other person, not really being honest with themselves, generally tends to end up in heartache, or even worse, that person that was not true or authentic in the relationship blaming the other person. And if you're blaming the other person, it doesn't really, you're not admitting to the responsibility that you had in making that situation happen if you're blaming someone else. And when you end up blaming someone else, guess what? The faults that you collected in that relationship or in that attempt at a relationship, they usually carry on and follow you into the next relationship. So that is an important principle that I want to say, is take responsibility for who you really are and getting that across to the person that you fancy, because maybe you are a match that should be together and maybe not. Okay, so just to be clear on that one point, okay, a guy that is on his social media account, renting a car, presenting it as his own, even renting a watch or different clothes and things like that to put on social media, to take photos of all these fancy things, does seem to be not necessarily a trend in this country, in Ireland, but it is definitely being reported and seen in other areas of social media, and I'm probably particularly talking about the United States. But the whole idea of presenting something on social media that is absolutely false, not even just a touched up, doctored presentation of yourself, but one that is really fabricated, one that is false, that is what I'm talking about. And it might be on the same side of things for in another way, a person presenting that they really like some activity because another person likes that activity, which will relate to one thing I'm going to go over. But presenting that you really do like something, or you do something but you don't actually, they're the sort of things that I'm talking about in regard to pretense and not being authentic. Okay, so let's get started. Just having a look and we're good to go. So first step, talking to someone you fancy. Well, go over and talk. Open your mouth and say words that come out. Now, as a step 0, if you're not even up to that point of being able to talk to them, and I'm not talking because you can't reach them, or they're a far distance away, or your emails aren't going through, your text message, or you don't have their phone number. No, what I'm talking about is there's the person over there, and you're here, and you fancy them, and you want to go to talk to them, but you're nervous as hell. You're getting sweaty palms. You're dry in the throat. You can hardly swallow. You've got butterflies in your tummy. You're maybe not just sweaty palms, but you're perspiring from your armpits that make these big moons of wetness from your arms, and you're having physiological reactions. Well, if you are falling into that category and you're not even up to the point of talking, then really what is happening there in that situation is in your own mind, because there is a person you fancy, and obviously I would expect the reason that you fancy them is because you've observed something about them, or you know something of them that takes your fancy, and you're not putting them into the category of a harmful or dangerous person. They're not harmful. They're of some survival or desire to you, and that's why you want to be associating with them or close to them. So therefore, there's no real reason that is completely logical, that person being a safe thing, a thing that you like, there's no logical reason about why you would feel threatened or, let's say, overly stressed in talking to the person, except if things start to race around your mind. And in that case, if you can't even get up to the point of approaching the person to talk to them, then you should probably join us for a webinar that we're going to do later. It's not myself actually, it's Vincent Kelly, where he talks about the way that your subconscious mind, or how L. Ron Hubbard called it, the reactive mind, and how that actually affects you and stops you and has a hidden influence over you that you can't logically or easily see because it is hidden. So if you're at that point, join us 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Tuesday, 8 p.m. Friday, and you'll learn more about that reactive mind. Okay, so pushing that aside, we're now up to the point where I'm now talking to you from the viewpoint that you can go across to someone and you can open your mouth. You can say some words. Maybe it mumbles and comes out, but at least there's something coming out. So we've gotten to that point, and that's where we're starting from. Okay. So, am I going to talk about a special pickup line that works? Or is it an attitude or a certain joke that you tell that gets the attention? Or do you start spurting out your qualifications or your accomplishments or your attributes that are nice? well, is it any of these things? Is it all of these things? What actually is it? Well, I'm not actually talking about it from the viewpoint of that type of an approach. I'm not giving you a magic bullet. I'm not giving you the line to use or the particular thing, insert your qualification here type thing. Let's consider some possible situations first of all. Okay, so here's one. You start to talk to a person you fancy, and the first line after you start saying, hey, so I don't see you here much. My name is no, is the answer you get. Straight out rebuttal, no sort of enjoining in conversation of any sort. You start to say something, you're smiling, you're approaching in a friendly manner, and all you get is no. Well, how does that make you feel? What was the first thing that you said? You start to, what did I say? Is there something on my teeth? What's wrong with my hair? How do I look? You can see that you start to introvert. You had the interest putting into that person, and all of a sudden it's shut down and no. Okay, so you can understand if that's happened to you, how that makes you feel. Horrible. Well, another scenario. You start to talk to a person, and initially they smile at you, they're looking at your eyes, they're making some eye contact, and as you continue talking, maybe it's a sentence or two, maybe there's some, conversation that's gone back and forth, and then very shortly after that, you notice that their eyes start darting off and looking around the room, or looking straight through you, or as if their eyes have glazed over, and you can kind of tell that they've started to have a conversation with themselves about what's actually happening, and gosh, this person bores me. Well, in that sort of situation, you might just be uncertain again. What is happening? They're not putting their attention on me. Their attention is all over the place. What did I say? What did I do? And again, these sort of situations can be very unnerving. They can be off-putting. They can make you think about not what you're saying, but about what it is that you are looking like or doing, or what did you do wrong? Not what did you do right, but what did you do wrong? And how can you fix it? And they're not interested. So all of these thoughts, you can see, they start to get the mind racing, and they really introvert you. Okay, another situation. You start talking to a person, you're having a few words with them, backwards and forwards, and there's a smile here and there, and perhaps a nervous laugh as you are, like exchanging things for maybe the first time, or maybe it's a repeat conversation. And, the atmosphere, it looks like you're soaring up there and you're having great success, and then all of a sudden the conversation just stalls, like a fighter jet streaking into the sky, and then all of a sudden just runs out of power and starts floating down. And you have that sinking feeling of, it's like, oh, what do I say now? And the conversation has kind of just settled and gone quiet, and then you both start to sort of kind of look around the room, and if you're drinking, take a sip of your drink or otherwise, or start to gaze around sort of like blankly because you don't know what to say. Well, in that sort of situation, again, same manifestations. Oh God, what should I say? And as you start to get more and more nervous and more under pressure in that way, it becomes more difficult for you to think about what it is that you want to say. I need to say something interesting. Oh God, no, I won't say that. Well, what if she's thinking this? And in the meantime, while your brain is racing a million miles an hour trying to think of things, their attention may have turned back to you, and you look like you're spazzing out over there in the corner doing, different things, and really they were interested in you, but you've kind of stalled. You don't know what else to say. So that can also be a situation. All right, well, another scenario could be you start to talk to someone, conversation seems to be going well, and it carries on for quite a few minutes. And you both seem to be enjoying it, and the exchange is there backwards and forwards, and you're saying nice things to each other, all that sort of thing. And then they interrupt you and they say, oh, sorry, I have to go. And you're like, oh, what did I say? And they're like, oh, nothing, I just have to go and meet someone. And you're like, oh, okay, where? And it's like, well, over there. So kind of an empty reason to leave the conversation, but it leaves you completely puzzled because everything looked like it was going fine. Or the conversation looked like it was going fine. Like, oh, I've got to go now. And you're like, oh, okay, great. When will we see each other? No, I've got to go. Okay, bye. And even though things seemed like they were going well, things were very social, you're left with a complete nothing of a question. What happened? Where am I? What was I doing? Why did we end it? Like, I thought we were having a good conversation here. So, all of those situations, it basically is usually you feel like you bombed out. You feel like you're the one stuck with the humiliation, stuck with the loss, stuck with the embarrassment and that you were shot down. You made an attempt, you put all your courage or all your effort, or you really, really desired and had a strong affinity, a word which we're going to come to shortly, for that person, and you presented yourself and you got shot down. So it's a big hit to your self-esteem in such an occasion, because you value the opinion of this person simply because you like them. And their opinion therefore matters to you because you really like them. And when that person then rejects you, it then puts the attention back on yourself, where you start to worry and mentally recall over and over again the scenario, trying to think of what it was that happened. It kind of creates a bit of a mystery for you, you see. Okay, so aside from this emptiness, this hollow feeling, this confidence that may have been shattered, I'm not sure if any of you that are watching along had any experiences of your own that you'd like to share, anything that you did that was a similar situation, or anything that you couldn't answer for yourself as to what happened. If you've had anything like that, then please let me know. I'm just going to check in over here on some of the different social media platforms, so give me a moment. Okay, there we are. Good, so we joined quite a few of these social media locations here. Okay, so if any of you have had a chance to think about any examples, you can put them in the comment section and Michelle will send them across to myself. Okay, so if you have any originations, I'd like to hear from you. If you're mid-typing those in or anything, please do put them into the comment section, because I'd like to have that participation. Okay, so what are we really looking at here as far as a solution to this, or as the top tip? Now, before I get to it, I do want to say that it isn't always about yourself. Now, we are going to do a whole series on relationships as we finish in this next week on communication. And we'll look at that there are two types of people. There are social people and there are antisocial people. And in addition to that, any person, even if they are a social person, they may have periods in their life where they're going through something. They have a situation occurring in their own life that's very, very difficult for them. And you're not always able to read or understand what is happening for that person at the time. So like in that last scenario that I painted, where you had a good conversation with someone and it seemed to be going fine, you were making smiles and there was light chatter and you made some jokes and everyone was smiling and everyone seemed to be having a good time, but then that person had to leave. Well, in that situation it can be very introverting and that can be a major problem, but what I'm saying now as an aside point is that you may actually be coming up against someone that is having a difficult situation that they're dealing with themselves. Or maybe they aren't the type of person that you really think that they are. Like I said at the beginning, just by you seeing someone and having an affinity for them because you like them, or you like the look of them, or something about them, or you've gotten to know them in some way, that person really represents something that is going to help you survive, and that's why you're attracted to them in a way. Now, even though on the exterior, on paper or whatever you've heard about them might actually sound good, there are some types of people that have a shield, or they have their own pretense, or they have a very social veneer that presents one thing, but it isn't actually how they are. Now, when we come to building relationships in the webinars later, we're going to look at that scenario of who it is that you're picking. What is it about that person? How do you start to pull apart or analyze perhaps the behavior of that person to determine maybe how you're going to be received. Okay, so that's the point aside, and now let me get on to this next thing. So what I'm about to talk about, we did mention yesterday in the webinar, and it's called the ARC triangle. And this is outlined in this book, Scientology, The Fundamentals of Thought, and it is a triangle that is represented by 3 words. So 3 words representing 3 points of the triangle. And this triangle, as L. Ron Hubbard describes it, has each of these 3 points related in this way. Well, first the 3 points are communication, affinity, and reality. And each of these things are related in that if you improve one side of the triangle, then the other 2 sides of the triangle improve. So if you were to improve communication, and through communicating, you're establishing more reality about the person, just by doing that, the affinity with that person will raise. So affinity being the degree of liking, or how much you like someone, or how much you can tolerate them being close to you, or how much you desire them to be close to you. And it can also be on the other end of the spectrum of affinity, how much you want something to be away from you, how much you dislike something. So affinity describes all those levels. Now, reality, the things that are real to that person, the things that they believe in, or the objects in the room that are real, that can be touched and seen, and that you can agree on. So reality has to do with agreement. And communication is actually the most important part of that triangle, because it is the entrance point. It's how you receive information through the perceptions, and you can observe something and you gather information. You're communicating with that person in some way. You're receiving information about them, and that's the entrance point to this triangle, through communication. So as that triangle is committed to memory, and as you have a full understanding of it, the next step is good, so how does it apply to me in life? Well, we're particularly looking at this relationship of talking to someone you fancy. Okay, so you already have this point of communication, which I described before. You go up and you talk to a person. Now, your affinity is already very high toward this person, and you're ready to communicate. So if by having those 2 things, you're going to raise the reality just on its own. But that's for yourself. What about for the other person? So far, maybe all that exists is that there is communication. You've just started communicating. And then we have to establish this next point, reality. And by increasing communication reality, we can then increase affinity. Let me go over a little bit about how this works. So if you see someone and you know of them previously, you have some information about them. You know what clothes they wear perhaps, or you know what they're wearing today, and that therefore is in their reality something that they think is good or nice to wear. So in having that as a reality point, and you're communicating about it, you're looking at what do you find real about that person, and what does that person find real about life, and trying to communicate on those common points. So by establishing common realities, maybe you both like a certain sports team, maybe you both like a certain drink, maybe you both like a certain venue. Talking about those points that you both have reality on will then automatically start to raise the affinity. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a film. Whatever it is that's in your environment that represents where you are, the building, the other people, etc. There are certain things in the environment that that person will have as real, or that they like, or that they don't like. So you don't have to just talk about things that they like. You can also share experiences about things that they don't like. And again, it's basically this interplay between these 3 factors: communicating about things that are real to them, or things that they like, with affinity and reality back and forth. You will raise each point of this triangle, and you could say that the triangle gets bigger and bigger. There's more communication, there's more reality, and there's more affinity. So understanding each of those things, communication, and there are aspects of how to communicate to someone which we've covered in other webinars. Reality, the things that the person agrees with. What do they think of this object? What do they think of that object? What do they think of the things in the environment or things in life? What is real to them? They think that this thing is good. They think that this thing is bad. They think that this thing is red. They think that this thing is white, etc., etc. So what things are real? And then affinity. What do they like to have with them? What do they like to have around them? You know, you could even look at it in terms of where are they standing at the time. Do they like to be by a door? Do they like to be outside? Do they like to be inside? Each of these points are clues for you to use communication to establish common realities. So by establishing common realities, you will automatically increase affinity. Just think about it this way. No matter where you're from, if you meet someone and they're from your hometown, then usually what happens? You have an increase of affinity because you're from the same area. If you find that someone likes a similar pastime as you, what happens? You usually have an increased affinity or liking for that person. So these three factors is really the key. And of course, this book does go over in a great amount of detail and precision on those points of communication, reality, and affinity. And by using that, let's say, technique or that knowledge of those points of a triangle being related to each other and how they raise or improve each other, that is how you can talk to someone that you fancy. So, just coming back across to social media and checking in with Michelle. Michelle, do we have any questions or comments or things that have come through? It would be very good to hear from you if I do that before we close up. Okay, just checking in. Okay, so it doesn't seem like we have any questions or any further comments or anything there across any of the platforms. So for the moment, I'm going to leave you with the link will appear in the comment section for each of the platforms. And on Zoom, there will be a link that will appear as well, that if you would like to get this book and understand more about this ARC, this affinity, reality, communication triangle, say it whichever way you like, but it's those three factors to learn more about that and the other basic principles of Scientology and communication and other things that relate to that, then do go ahead and get the book, because the principles of Scientology may actually contain the answer that you're looking for to be able to communicate better to someone you fancy. All right, Shanae for today. We'll see you tomorrow.